Most people don't have a health problem. They have a food problem. In the UK right now, shelves are full of products that claim to be good for you, while quietly doing the opposite, but very little of it actually feeds the body the way people think it does. So instead of chasing trends or cutting out entire food groups, this video takes a different approach. I'm breaking down 9 foods you should be eating in 2026. Simple, familiar foods that still work when everything else feels confusing. They're foods that hold up nutritionally, practically, and financially. Some will challenge what you've been told. One of them changes how you should shop entirely. 9. Bread. Bread is one of those foods that has always had a place in everyday life. For many people in the UK, it's something you grow up with, something that shows up at breakfast, at lunch, or when you need something quick and familiar. Because it's so common, most people don't spend much time questioning it. It's simply there, part of the routine. Over time, however, conversations around health and nutrition have slowly changed how people feel about bread. Without any single moment or announcement, the idea started to settle in that bread might not be doing us any favors. Some people cut back, others avoid it altogether. And while there are reasons this thinking developed, it often leads people to miss a more important point. Bread itself isn't a single thing. What we call bread today covers a wide range of products that behave very differently in the body. Traditional bread was made from whole grains, eaten in its natural form and valued because it was filling and dependable. It digested slowly, supported steady energy, and helped people feel satisfied between meals. What changed wasn't our bodies, but the way bread began to be produced. As convenience and shelf life became priorities, grains were increasingly refined. Much of the natural fiber was removed, and with it, a large part of what made bread nourishing in the first place. To make the final product more appealing, sugars, oils, and additives were introduced, creating bread that looked familiar but acted very differently once eaten. This shift explains why bread today often leaves people hungry sooner than expected. Fiber plays a major role in digestion, helping to regulate blood sugar and control appetite. When it's missing, bread becomes a quick source of energy that fades just as quickly, encouraging overeating later in the day. The solution many people choose is to eliminate bread entirely. But that approach isn't always necessary. The more useful change is learning how to choose bread that still resembles what it was meant to be. Bread made from whole grains, seeds, or sprouted grains contains the fiber and structure that support a balanced diet. It fills you up properly and works with your body rather than against it. Eating well isn't about cutting out familiar foods for the sake of it. It's about understanding which versions support your health and which ones quietly undermine it. When bread is chosen carefully, it can still be part of a healthy way of eating without the energy crashes or constant hunger people have come to associate with it. And as common as bread is, it's only the beginning. The next food on this list has been misunderstood for even longer, and most people are still reacting to outdated advice when it comes to it. 8. Butter. Butter has been part of everyday cooking for generations. It's what people spread on toast, cook with, and use to add flavor to meals. For a long time, it was simply seen as food, not something that needed to be analyzed or debated. It sat quietly in the fridge, used without much thought. Over the years, that changed. As nutrition advice became more focused on fats, butter slowly picked up a reputation it never had before. It was labeled as something to avoid, something indulgent, and eventually something unhealthy. In its place came spreads and substitutes that promised to be lighter, better, and more modern. At the time, the reasoning seemed logical. Butter contains saturated fat, and saturated fat was framed as the problem. What wasn't fully understood then was how much the quality of fat matters and how different fats behave in the body. In trying to remove butter, people didn't remove fat from their diets. They replaced it with something else entirely. Those replacements were often made from highly processed vegetable oils. To turn liquid oils into spreadable products, manufacturers had to heavily refine them, strip away impurities, and stabilize them with additives. The result was something that looked like a cleaner choice, but was far removed from anything traditionally eaten. Butter, on the other hand, is simple. It comes from cream. When it's minimally processed, it contains natural fats that the body recognizes and knows how to use. Fat plays an important role in hormone production, nutrient absorption, and keeping meals satisfying. When fat is removed or replaced with poor quality alternatives, meals often become less filling, leading people to eat more overall. This is where confusion still lingers. People hear the word fat and assume it automatically means unhealthy. In reality, the type of fat and how it's produced makes a meaningful difference. Butter used in moderation as part of a balanced diet behaves very differently from industrial spreads designed for shelf life rather than nourishment. The key, once again, is quality. Butter made from milk produced by cows raised on natural diets tends to be more nutrient-dense and richer in flavor. It doesn't rely on artificial coloring or long ingredient lists. It's simply food in its most familiar form. In 2026, eating well doesn't require removing butter from your life. It requires understanding why it was replaced in the first place and whether those replacements ever delivered on their promises. For many people, returning to simple, traditional foods brings clarity back to eating. And while butter has been misunderstood for decades, the next food on this list is still surrounded by confusion today, even though it's something many people eat every morning. 7. Eggs. Eggs are one of the most familiar foods in the kitchen. They're quick, versatile, affordable, and for many people a regular part of breakfast. Because they're so common, most people assume all eggs are more or less the same. You pick a carton, check the date, and move on. But over time, eggs have quietly become one of the most misunderstood foods on the shelf. At different points, eggs have been blamed for cholesterol, warned against for heart health, and then welcomed back again. That back and forth has left many people unsure how to feel about them. Some eat them without thinking, others limit them, unsure whether they're helping or harming their health. What's often missing from that conversation is that eggs are not a single uniform product. How an egg is produced matters just as much as the egg itself. The conditions the hens live in, what they eat, and how much space they have all influence the nutritional quality of the final food. Most supermarket eggs come from systems designed for efficiency. Hens are kept indoors, fed a standard grain-based diet, and produce eggs that look consistent and predictable. These eggs provide protein, but nutritionally, they are fairly limited. Eggs from hens that spend time outdoors and eat a more natural diet are different. When hens forage, eat insects, and move freely, the eggs they produce tend to contain a broader range of nutrients. The yolks are deeper in color, the structure is firmer, and the nutritional profile is more robust. This difference matters because eggs are more than just a protein source. They also contain fats, vitamins, and compounds that support brain health, eye health, and hormone function. When the quality drops, so does much of that benefit. Many people assume that labels alone guarantee quality, but not all labels mean what they imply. Terms that sound reassuring can sometimes reflect minimum standards rather than meaningful differences. The result is that people believe they're making a better choice without actually changing much at all. In 2026, eggs can still be one of the most valuable foods you eat, but only if you understand what you're buying. Choosing eggs produced in more natural conditions helps ensure you're getting the nutrients eggs are known for, not just the convenience. Eggs don't need to be feared or avoided, they need to be chosen with a bit more awareness. When they are, they remain one of the simplest ways to add high-quality nutrition to everyday meals. While eggs are often associated with breakfast, the next food on this list is what many people replace them with, without realizing what they're giving up. 6. Oats. Oats are one of those foods most people feel fairly neutral about. They don't generate strong opinions, and they're rarely controversial. For many households, they're simply something that sits in the cupboard, often bought with good intentions and used inconsistently. Over the years, oats have quietly taken a back seat to more convenient breakfast options. Boxes promise crunch, flavor, added vitamins, and excitement, while oats are often seen as plain, boring, or old-fashioned. The assumption becomes that oats are a fallback rather than a foundation. What's easy to overlook is why oats were eaten so widely in the first place. Oats are naturally dense in nutrients that support steady energy. They contain fiber that slows digestion, helping blood sugar rise gradually instead of sharply. That same fiber contributes to fullness, which is why a bowl of oats tends to keep people satisfied longer than many packaged breakfasts. When oats are left largely untouched, they deliver what the body expects food to do. They provide carbohydrates that release energy slowly, along with minerals that support metabolism and overall function. There's no need for fortification, flavoring, or added sweetness for oats to be effective. The contrast becomes clear when you compare them to most breakfast cereals. Cereals are often built around refined grains, sugars, and additives that prioritize taste and shelf life. Even when they include whole grains, they're usually processed to the point where much of the natural structure has been lost. That processing changes how the body responds. Instead of steady energy and satiety, people experience spikes followed by crashes. Hunger returns sooner, leading to more snacking and less stable eating patterns throughout the day. Oats avoid this cycle precisely because they are simple. They don't rely on hidden sugars or synthetic additions to perform. They work because they retain their natural composition. In 2026, choosing oats isn't about chasing a health trend. It's about returning to a breakfast that supports the rhythm of the day rather than disrupting it. Prepared simply and paired with other nourishing foods, oats remain one of the most reliable ways to start the morning. The next food on this list proves that good nutrition doesn't have to be expensive or complicated, even when it comes to protein. 5. Tuna. Tuna doesn't usually get much attention in conversations about healthy eating. For most people, it's something they buy out of habit, keep in the cupboard and use when time or options are limited. It's often seen as a backup food, not a deliberate choice. That perception is exactly what makes tuna interesting. When you look at what people are actually trying to achieve with their meals, staying full, getting enough protein, and keeping costs under control, tuna quietly solves all three. A single portion provides a dense amount of protein without requiring cooking, preparation, or expensive ingredients. That alone puts it ahead of many so-called healthy lunches. Protein plays a key role in how the body regulates hunger. Meals that are protein poor tend to leave people unsatisfied, even if they contain plenty of calories. Tuna works differently. It supports muscle maintenance, helps with recovery, and most importantly for everyday life, it keeps appetite stable for longer periods. That's why people often feel genuinely full after a tuna-based meal, not just temporarily satisfied. Cost is another reason tuna deserves more credit. Fresh fish is often treated as the gold standard, but it isn't always practical. Canned tuna offers similar nutritional benefits at a fraction of the price, making it one of the most efficient sources of protein available in the UK. When budgets are tight, this matters more than people like to admit. There is, however, a reason tuna sometimes gets lumped into the be careful category. Concerns around mercury have led many people to limit or avoid it altogether. What's often missed is that not all tuna is the same. Smaller species tend to accumulate far less mercury, making them a safer option when eaten regularly. Moderation and variety still matter, but fear alone doesn't tell the whole story. The bigger issue is how tuna is used. When it's paired with overly processed sauces, sugary dressings, or refined breads, much of its benefit gets diluted. When it's kept simple and combined with whole foods, it becomes a reliable anchor for a balanced meal. Tuna isn't exciting, and it doesn't need to be. Its value comes from how consistently it delivers on what people actually need from food: nourishment, satiety, and practicality. In a landscape full of complicated advice, that reliability counts. And if tuna shows how powerful simple protein can be, the next food on this list takes that same idea and raises the nutritional bar even higher without becoming more complicated. 4. Salmon. Salmon is one of those foods almost everyone agrees is healthy, yet very few people ever stop to question what that actually means. It's commonly recommended, added to meal plans, and treated as a safe choice without much thought beyond its reputation. But salmon is a food where the details matter far more than the name. At a glance, most salmon looks the same, the colour is familiar, the cuts are neat, and the packaging does a good job of reassuring you. It creates the impression that choosing salmon is enough, that the decision ends there. In reality, Two pieces of salmon that look almost identical can deliver very different results once you eat them. The difference begins with how the fish lives. Salmon that grows in open water moves constantly and feeds naturally, which shapes its nutritional profile over time. Its flesh develops differently, and the fats people associate with salmon, the ones linked to brain health and inflammation control, tend to be present in higher amounts. Other salmon is raised in tightly controlled environments designed for efficiency. The diet is manufactured, growth is accelerated, and the final product is engineered to look familiar. The color people expect doesn't always come from nature, but from what the fish is fed. Visually, it checks the box. Nutritionally, it doesn't always live up to the promise. This matters because people don't eat salmon just for taste. They eat it because they believe it supports long-term health. When the nutritional profile changes, that belief quietly stops matching reality, even though nothing on the surface looks wrong. Salmon is a good example of a larger pattern. Foods that gain a healthy reputation often stop being questioned. Over time, shortcuts creep in, standards drop, and people continue buying them under the assumption that the benefits are guaranteed. If you're noticing that pattern emerge as we go through this list, that's intentional. Understanding it is far more valuable than memorizing any single food. And if this way of breaking things down is useful to you, taking a moment to like the video or subscribe helps this kind of content reach people who are trying to make sense of their food choices as well. Salmon doesn't need to be eaten constantly to matter. Its value comes from choosing it with awareness rather than on autopilot. When it's selected carefully, even occasional meals can contribute nutrients that are difficult to replace elsewhere. The next food on this list brings the focus back to something far more ordinary. A lunchtime staple most people never think twice about, yet one that quietly accumulates ingredients over time. 3. Turkey. Turkey is rarely treated as something that needs attention. It's familiar, neutral, and often chosen because it feels like a safe option. For many people, it's the default protein for sandwiches, quick lunches, or lighter meals. You buy it sliced, put it in the fridge, and don't think much more about it. That lack of attention is exactly where the problem starts. Unlike fresh foods, turkey is most often consumed in a processed form. Once meat is sliced, packaged, and designed to last longer, the final product depends heavily on what's added along the way. 2 packs of turkey can look almost identical from the front, yet behave very differently once they become part of your daily routine. When you turn the packet around, the differences begin to show. Some turkey is made with little more than meat and basic seasoning. Others rely on fillers, sugars, starches, and stabilizers to improve texture, flavor, and shelf life. These additions don't just sit there passively. Over time, they contribute to unnecessary inflammation, water retention, and a gradual shift away from real nourishment. This is why turkey often confuses people. On paper, it's lean, high in protein, and easy to work with. In practice, the way it's processed can quietly undo those benefits. When eaten frequently, which is exactly how most people use it, small ingredient choices start to add up. Protein itself plays a major role in how satisfied you feel after a meal. It supports muscle maintenance, helps stabilize energy, and reduces the urge to keep snacking. Clean, simple turkey delivers that effectively. Turkey weighed down with extra ingredients does not, even if the calorie numbers look similar. There's also a psychological element here. Because turkey is seen as a healthy choice, people don't scrutinize it the way they might with other processed foods. That trust creates a blind spot. Once a food becomes routine, it stops being questioned. Choosing turkey well doesn't require cutting it out or replacing it with something complicated. It simply means paying attention to what's actually in it. When the ingredient list stays short and recognizable, turkey does what people expect it to do, provide protein without unnecessary baggage. Eating better often comes down to tightening the margins rather than making dramatic changes. Turkey is a perfect example of how small adjustments made consistently can shift the quality of your diet without changing how you eat. As ordinary as turkey seems, the next food on this list takes everyday eating one step further, into something people enjoy without a second thought, yet rarely consider the long-term impact of. 2. Potatoes, chips. Potatoes are one of the most familiar foods in the UK. They're simple, filling, and deeply woven into everyday meals. Whether baked, mashed, or fried, potatoes themselves have never really been the problem. In fact, for a long time, they were a dependable source of energy and comfort food, rolled into one. What changed wasn't the potato, it was what started happening to it. When potatoes are turned into chips, most people assume the issue is indulgence, that it's something to enjoy occasionally and move on. But the real difference between chips that quietly work against your health and chips that don't cause the same damage has far less to do with the potato and far more to do with the oil used to cook it. Modern snack foods rely heavily on industrial seed oils. These oils are cheap, stable, and easy to use at scale, which is why they appear everywhere. Over time, however, frequent exposure to these oils contributes to inflammation and metabolic stress, especially when combined with refined carbohydrates. This creates a strange contradiction. People avoid potatoes because they believe they're unhealthy, while continuing to consume oils that are far more problematic. The potato becomes the scapegoat, and the real issue goes unnoticed. When potatoes are cooked in more stable fats, the picture changes. The food becomes easier to digest, more satisfying, and less disruptive to appetite regulation. The experience of eating it changes as well. Instead of triggering constant cravings, it actually feels complete. This is why oil choice matters so much. It determines how food behaves in the body long after the meal is over. Chips cooked in better oils don't suddenly become health food, but they stop contributing to the same cycle of inflammation and overconsumption that drives many modern eating habits. There's also a mental shift that happens here. When people allow themselves to enjoy foods they like without hidden downsides, they're less likely to swing between restriction and excess. That balance plays a bigger role in long-term health than perfection ever could. Eating well doesn't mean cutting out familiar pleasures. It means understanding which parts of the process actually matter and choosing accordingly. Potatoes, when handled properly, can still belong in a healthy way of eating without guilt or confusion. With that, we arrive at the final food on this list, one that brings together everything we've talked about so far: quality, sourcing, and the difference between food that looks the same and food that truly nourishes. 1. Beef. Beef is often treated as a food people need to justify. It's discussed carefully, limited, intentionally, and sometimes avoided altogether, usually because it's been grouped into broad warnings about red meat. Over time, that caution has turned into an assumption that beef is something to minimize if you want to eat well. What tends to get lost in that conversation is that beef is not a single, uniform food. Beef reflects how the animal lived, what it ate, and how it was raised. Those factors shape the final product in ways that matter nutritionally. When cattle are raised on their natural diet, the meat they produce contains a balance of fats and nutrients that the body recognizes and uses efficiently. When that process changes, the nutritional outcome changes with it. This distinction helps explain why beef can feel energizing for some people and heavy for others. It isn't simply about portion size or frequency, it's about whether the meat provides nourishment or simply calories. High-quality beef delivers protein that supports muscle, iron that supports oxygen transport, and fats that contribute to satiety and hormone function. When those elements are diluted, the experience of eating it changes. There's also a practical side that often gets overlooked. Beef is one of the most versatile foods in everyday cooking. It fits into simple meals, stretches well across multiple servings, and provides a sense of fullness that many people struggle to achieve with lighter proteins. That satisfaction matters because meals that feel complete reduce the urge to snack or compensate later. Another reason beef is misunderstood is cost perception. People assume that eating it well is automatically expensive. In reality, choosing the right cuts and formats can make beef one of the more economical ways to meet protein needs, especially when compared to highly processed alternatives that offer far less nutritional return. Beef also ties together a theme that's run quietly through this entire list. Foods don't become unhealthy because they exist. They become problematic when shortcuts replace quality and convenience replaces intention. Beef simply makes that truth harder to ignore. In 2026, eating well doesn't require eliminating foods that humans have relied on for generations. It requires understanding which versions support your body and which ones quietly work against it. When chosen with care, beef remains one of the most grounding, nourishing foods available. It brings us back to a simple idea. Eating well isn't about chasing perfection or fearfully avoiding foods. It's about recognizing quality, respecting food for what it is, and making choices that hold up over time. If this video helped you see food a little more clearly, take a second to support the channel. Liking the video lets YouTube know this kind of straightforward, and if you want more videos like this, make sure you're subscribed.